Welcome to Satsang. Beginning, as usual, with one of the questions that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. I grew up Christian, and since nursery school, all I've heard is that God is a vengeful God, the whole eye for an eye thing. I've never believed that to be true. To me, God is nothing but pure love and light. Why do so many religions paint God in such a negative light? So, first of all, it's really important for us to realize that there's a very big distinction, regardless of what religion you're in. There's a very big distinction between what we can call the Word of God and the way that religion is used to make people obey. Sort just go halka sa, है ना, बढ़ा दो इसको थोड़ा सा. धन्यवाद भैया. It's nicer to be able to talk softly and have the mic do its job than to. So there's a very big, बढ़िया भैया धन्यवाद. There's a very big distinction between that which is written in Scripture, that which has been given to us by the divine, or by the embodiments of the divine, or by the prophets of the divine, and the way that those words get utilized, whether it's in schools, whether it's in families, whether it's in our communities, to get people to behave. So I am not a scholar on comparative religions, and so would not even attempt to go in that direction, but I would simply say that, first of all, your felt sense connection with the divine, whatever religion you are born in, whatever religion you subscribe to, your felt sense connection with God is the most powerful way of knowing anything. And so if your felt sense experience of the divine is one of love and light, compassion, generosity, caring, nurturing, nourishing, let that be your guiding light. And interestingly, by the way, if you listen to the mystics, the sages, the lovers of God in all of the religions, the divine they speak of sounds remarkably the same. And it's a being of love. It's a being with whom these mystics and sages are loving and are in love. I think what happens in our societies is we need ways, or we think we need ways, to keep people in line. We need ways to make people do what we want them to do. Whether we believe it's really in their best interest, or whether we realize it's in our own best interest. Using religion is the best way to get people to do anything. So whether we tell kids, do this and God will be happy, do this, God will be angry, do this, God will reward you, do that, God will punish you. Well, it's right in line with the whole Santa Claus thing, right? I mean, it's one parenting technique. We just switch who we're talking about. God is going to be angry. God is going to be happy. Come Christmas time, Santa will give you what you want. Santa will not give you what you want. So I think we use these techniques in families, in schools, in communities, just to get people to behave the way we want them to. Religion is an easy way to do that. We're seeing it tragically in a lot of the violence, in a lot of the violent vehemence that no religion at its actual core subscribes to. But if let's say I've got visions of great power and visions of great wealth, and I would like to have more power and more wealth that I'm going to have by accruing more land. And maybe this land is in dispute. And whether it's a land like the land of Israel or the land of Kashmir or so many other disputed lands in the world, if I've got a vision of power for myself, it's going to be a lot easier to get people to go out there and to risk their lives or even sacrifice their lives to do what I want them to do, namely get me that piece of land, like fight off the other people, if I convince them that it's what God wants. I mean, if I say, hey, by the way, I really would like some more power, could you go out there and sacrifice your life for that? Chances are I'm not going to get a lot of takers. But if I say, God has told me to tell you that those people are the wrong ones, the bad ones, the evil ones. They are harming our people, the good ones, the right ones, the pure ones. God has told me to tell you that if you secure our sacred land from the hands of these horrible people, that you will have a place in fill in the blank of however respective religion speaks about heaven or the afterlife or whatever it may be. And so we've co-opted religion as a cheap parenting tool, as a cheap way of keeping people in line, and as a very cheap and very dangerous way of getting people to go out there and fight and kill each other. So I agree with you. I think that the felt sense experience of God is love and light, not violence. Neither God being violent toward us, nor God wanting us to be violent toward others. And this is why, whatever religion you are from, paths and traditions and techniques of meditation, of yoga, of prayer, of satsang, that get us deep into an internal felt sense experience, are the powerful ways, and none of them changes your religion. None of them is about you should worship God in this way or believe in God in that way. They're all ways to get you actually to be able to hear that voice of God, to feel the presence of God in your own life. So what I would suggest to the questioner and to anyone else is free yourself from teachings that don't seem in line with your felt sense experience. Go back to primary source. Go back to Scripture. Go back, whether you're reading the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Guru Granth Sahib, whatever you're reading. Go back to as original the source as you can. If you speak the original language, read it in the untranslated version. If you don't speak the original language, no problem. Get a translated version by someone who really doesn't have an agenda, someone who's not the type of person who needs to hold on to power. And use that original source as a tool for your meditation. Read a chapter, read a paragraph, and then meditate on it. Let it speak to you. And go back to the prayers, the songs, the poems of the lovers of God. From Mirabai to Rumi to St. Francis of Assisi. Read that which was being written by those who lived with God, in love with God. The songs, the poems, the prayers are exquisite, and they will catalyze a love for God in you that isn't dependent upon what someone in this particular religious class or that religious sermon, or the way that your teacher or a parent told you God wants you to be. Go back to the original source. Feel it for yourself. The whole point of spirituality is to connect with the divine. So hear it, feel it, and then trust that. And if you need to look for those secondary sources, get them from those who know God. The sages, the saints, the rishis, the yogis, the gurus, the lovers of God. Because they're hearing it direct. And they don't have any agenda. They don't care if your room is clean or not clean. Right? If you got good grades or not so good grades. What you're doing behind the closed doors of your bedroom with whom, of what gender. They're not concerned about those things. They're only concerned about loving God. So connect with that love of God directly, ideally, and until then, through those who themselves love God and experience that love of God. These are the ones to trust. Does anyone here have a question? Be happy to take any questions that anyone might have. Yes, of course.
Namaste, Sadhviji. Okay, so I have a question. It's on. Yeah. Okay, is it fine?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So the more I'm growing in my spiritual journey, the more I've stopped resonating with the people I used to resonate with, like vibe with. Mostly my friends back home, and like I tried to avoid them most of the times. For example, they were planning a trip and I can go, but I don't want to. And it's like a lot of things have changed. My lifestyle has been changed. And I don't know like if I'm doing wrong, if I'm avoiding them, or because they have been with me from years. And I know it feels bad sometimes, but sometimes for me, if I look for my journey, so it feels okay. Like
Beautiful. Your internal internal sense is really what you should listen to. इनकी वो माइक बंद कर दीजिए कभी, है ना? धन्यवाद. Your internal sense is what you should listen to. If it feels right and okay in you, that's your guide point. Sometimes, though, it's better to be clear than just to avoid, because then the situation keeps arising. So if someone says, hey, do you want to go to the bar on Saturday night? And you say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't, I've got something else to do. Then they say, okay, well, what about Sunday night? Say, oh, actually, I'm really already booked up for Sunday night. Then they say, well, what about Monday? Oh, Monday, yeah, got it. Eventually they're going to say, is there any night you can come? So at some point, it's going to be helpful to simply say, that really doesn't line up anymore with who I am. It doesn't line up anymore with my goals, with my experience, with what I want, what I'm looking for. And you'll find that even though the conversation might be a little difficult, that you feel really clear afterwards. And another really beautiful thing might happen. I can't guarantee it, but it might. Out of the group of them, there might be one, maybe two, but more likely maybe one, who actually says, you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because I hate this stuff, but these are my only friends, so I go along with it. But God, wow, if you're not, I also, God, for so long, I haven't wanted to go. But mujhe laga fir akele rah jaungi. Can I come with you? I'd so much rather do the things that you're talking about doing. So you may find that it's natural that as we grow, there are certain things that no longer fit. When our bodies grow, our clothes no longer fit. Happens as we grow when we're kids. Keep changing clothes. It also happens when, maybe you were really overweight and you went on a diet, you got healthy, you lost a bunch of weight. Clothes no longer fit. Get rid of them. Why would you hold on to clothes for the 300-pound you when you have absolutely no plans of becoming 300 pounds again? Right? Better to get rid of them. In the same way as we change spiritually, certain things no longer fit. Certain behaviors in our own life and certain relationships. And in the same way that clothes that no longer fit, even if they happen to be, our favorite pair of shoes or our favorite pants, eventually you realize it just doesn't fit anymore. You let them go. Right? Parents have this fight with kids all the time. Kids have a favorite pair of shoes and they're going to wear them until their toes are pointed, through the holes. And eventually when the kids at school are asleep, the parents throw them away because the kid won't let go. And we become like that sometimes with relationships, with habits. We realize we've grown, but nonetheless we kind of hold on. And it's important to recognize it no longer fits. Doesn't mean you burn it or beat it in the street. You just let it go. And so you're going to find that a lot of relationships, you just let them go, and that it's simple and it's easy and pain-free. But you may find that there's one or two that actually end up stronger than before. So give them that benefit, the benefit of the doubt, by explaining what it is that's going on in your mind. Yes. Yeah, and then we'll come to you.
Sadhviji, namaste. My name is Shambhunath. I came from Mumbai. I'm 46-year-old and an engineer also. A lovely wife and two kids, one 17-year-old and one 12-year-old daughter. You know, I am on the spiritual path since the age of 5. I fall in love with God. I started chanting. I started doing stuti. Since the age of 10 or 12, I started doing daily Vishnu Sahasranama Stotra Path. And Mahamrityunjaya mantra. Every means whatever comes in my way, wherever, whatever the Guru. I came from a Brahmin family, so learned a lot from family also. But you know what happened, in fact, and then I came to engineering and then got my job also. Very good job, in fact. I'm always successful and always very successful, in fact. One of the best employee of my company. But you know, with the time my love grows with the God, I feel the blessings more and more of the God. Means things are getting done very seamlessly, effortlessly for me. Sometimes just I close my eyes, I take the dhyan of Ma Kali, Bhagwan Shiv, and things gets done. But what happened, in fact, I am also getting more and more anxieties. More and more anxieties. You know, when on my official tour, when I used to go to the out of the India, US or somewhere, I cannot sleep for almost 8-10 days until I am not back to my home. That my fear of life, my all the fears and anxieties grows up.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment.
Yeah.
Can you describe that anxiety and fear when you're lying in bed?
Yeah.
And it's on the 6th day that you haven't slept, so your body is just dying for sleep.
Exactly.
Every cell of your body needs to sleep. What exactly is going on in your mind? Fear and anxiety are just words.
Oh yeah.
What is the actual thought that you are having, or a vision or an experience? What is it fear of or anxiety about?
Oh, fear of death, right?
Okay.
Fear of not going back to my home. Fear of what happened with my family, with my kids.
Okay. I'm going to just keep stopping you to zoom in on what the actual issue is. So when you say fear of death, but then you could die anywhere. It's not only when you're out of the house. Then fear of what's happened to the family. So it's fear of you dying, or fear of something happening to your family, or it's both?
It's both. And one more important point, Sadhviji, it increased so much that since last 1 year I'm on depression pill. I went to many psychiatrists across the India. In fact, top psychiatrists in Mumbai and Delhi. Many has told me that you have the OSD or that or this, many things. And finally, 1 year back, I started taking their advice. And since last 1 year, and I'm on depression pills. While my love is still there for the God, but I'm not able to concentrate on the God. I know Him. I know that He is inside me. I know I read the Gita since my childhood. line by line. I remember those, everything. But I'm not able to come over those obsessions.
Okay.
I'm not able. So I was telling to all my teachers, yoga teachers, Preeti and Karen and Shal, so that what is happening, in fact, that probably I'm doing just on a spiritual path and bhakti, maybe not doing meditation, which you said, or yoga or any other path, right? Probably this could be reason, but I want you to advise me how to come over for this.
So fear of death and fear of losing our loved ones, this is very normal and very natural. Everyone is afraid of death, almost. Even an ant is afraid of death. Even a mosquito is afraid of death, right? Try chasing a mosquito around the room that you're going to, try to swat or kill or something. They're very smart. No creature wants to die. No matter how undeveloped or fully developed their brain and nervous system are, nonetheless, every creature does whatever it possibly can to prevent dying. And the fear of losing our loved ones is also very, very natural. However, in most people's case, this fear is not debilitating. It does not keep them awake at night for 6, 7, 8, 10 nights in a row. It doesn't interfere with their life. The rule of thumb in psychology for knowing that something is a major problem is that it interferes with your life. It stops you from being able to live your life. Most people are afraid of death, and everybody draws the line somewhere, right? So somebody may say, well, I'll water ski, but I won't paraglide. Okay? No cliffs, no airplanes. I'm not going to jump out of an airplane. I'm not going to jump off of a cliff. But yeah, no problem. You could pull me behind a speeding boat on long, skinny sticks of metal. No problem. Somebody else may say, you know what? That whole fast boat and long things of metal, I think I'd rather just be in the boat and enjoy. In either case, it hasn't interfered with anybody's life. Paragliding, hang gliding, water skiing, bungee jumping, these things are not critical aspects of our daily life. Some people do them, other people don't do them. Really not a big deal. You can have a very fulfilling, beautiful, meaningful life and never bungee jump, never paraglide, never scuba dive. However, when it's interfering with what we would consider normal activities, sleeping, eating, working, being in relationship, being happy, being calm, enjoying life, then we know there is a problem. Now, I am all in favor and a very strong proponent of deep spiritual practices. Meditation, yoga, seva, japa. These are incredibly powerful practices to help us. And it actually sounds to me like you've got something going on psychologically as well. And unfortunately, you can't always meditate away psychological issues. Sometimes they need to be addressed. So you mentioned that you're on antidepressant medicine. I would hope that you're also in a really deep and intense type of therapy that's taking you into these fears, that's asking you questions like, when was the first time you experienced this? What was going on at that time? Imagine something happened to your family. What would that mean for you? And was able to walk you through the aspects of your life that bring up this type of fear, like, for example, something as seemingly harmless as traveling. Right? Traveling would be considered part of a normal life. But if you're not able to do it because of this fear, that you're going to lie in bed at night panicked, I would definitely start a deep spiritual practice. I'm so glad you're here. You're going to learn meditation. You're going to learn yoga. Hopefully you'll be talked to about the benefits of seva and given opportunities to get inspired and involved. Along with that, I would really encourage you when you get home to be seen not just by a psychiatrist who's going to prescribe medicine and monitor symptoms with titrating your medicine, but actually with someone in the field of psychotherapy who's really able to work with you on why are you having these types of fears. Because for someone who's so connected to God, ultimately that faith should be the inoculation against fear. But it's not. And to me, what that means is that there's something else going on. That there have been experiences in your life that have created impressions in your psyche that are now manifesting. And you know, psychology and spirituality go very well together. I'm a big fan of both of them. I am always deeply interested in my own psyche. I'll find myself saying things to myself a lot like, that was really interesting. What did I get so upset about that for? Let's look at that. I mean, it's really easy to just say, oh, this person is like this, or that person is like this, or oh yeah, this is death. I mean, yeah, that's scary. But don't stop there. Go within. Why is it? Why is it different for you? Look at it. A thought never killed anyone. And so allow yourself to think about, not worry about, but actually go into it. Okay, you're afraid of death. Well, let's go into it. What would it be like? And just allow yourself to really bear with it. You're not going to die. Certainly not by thinking about it. Eventually you will die, but we're all dying eventually. And allow those thoughts, recognizing that they're not going to kill you. And see what happens. See what arises with those fears. And I think it'll give you a lot of insight into yourself, but I would suggest beginning the process with a professional who's going to take you through with processes that will go very, very, very well with your new practices of meditation and yoga and japa and seva. It's going to be a beautiful complement to each other. Yeah. Of course. Yes.
Sadhviji, Jai Gange, I'm Radhika. When you lose a loved one, how do you get yourself to accept the fact that, he or she is never coming back? You maybe enter the room, or you look at their belongings and then you think, they might just come back. You're not supposed to give them off. They might just turn up.
Yeah. So the flip side of fear of losing a loved one, how do you deal with it when you've actually lost them? And this idea of expecting them to come back. So acceptance is the final stage in the grieving process. It's not the first stage. There's a beautiful path of grief that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross spoke about. Many others have spoken, but she spoke about it really beautifully. In a process of how do we deal with grief? And these processes that begin, of course, with denial. They're not dead, they are coming back. I don't want to hear it, don't tell me this, it didn't happen. And then, of course, we get into what she calls bargaining. Okay, God, I'll do this for you. Promise, I'll be good. I'll do this, I'll do that. Just give me another chance. Eventually we move into anger. And of course that varies based on your own personal, emotional and spiritual grounding. But I think that phase is natural for everyone. Depending also on the situation of the person who died. I mean, if somebody died at 90 plus and they lived a beautiful, healthy life and they died after a short illness, yeah, we miss them, we're sad, there's a blip of anger. But it's much different than someone whose child got shot in school. And so for most of us it falls somewhere on that spectrum. But there is that blip of anger. For some it's big, for some it's small. And then eventually the anger subsides into acceptance. But allow yourself the process. And don't worry if it doesn't follow this particular path exactly. Because of course it's not always linear. They go back and forth, it's circular. Just because you're now angry doesn't mean that you're done bargaining. So it goes back and forth. You know, they come in waves. There's of course another aspect of it even that I've noticed, which is joy. Which of course brings up guilt and confusion in people who have lost a loved one, but from a spiritual perspective it makes perfect sense, because when we think about the loved one, which naturally we do a lot more after they've died than we do while they're still living, just because now they're dead, so we're thinking about it all the time. Well, when we think about them, sometimes that thought brings up denial, sometimes it brings up bargaining, sometimes it brings up anger, sometimes it brings up anguish and pain, and sometimes it brings up joy. Because we feel them in us. And we know that, yeah, their body is gone, but we also know that on many levels they're still here with us because we can feel them. And everybody feels them in different ways. But we know they're not really gone. And so when we feel them and think about them, there's this joy. And so your grief is going to take a lot of different aspects, and there are stages, but again, they're not always linear. And acceptance doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean you never have anger or grief or bargaining again. There isn't really a way to deal with or get over that loss. the way is to allow yourself to be changed by their loss. We crack open. Our heart literally breaks. They've done actually scientific studies showing that in a lot of the brain chemistry, a broken heart is actually processed very similarly to a broken limb. Like, yes, it actually hurts. It actually hurts. We're having the same pain response to that heart being broken as we would if we fell and broke our leg. So allow that. But allow it to be a dynamic experience because it keeps changing. And anybody who's ever broken a limb knows eventually it sets, but it sets not quite exactly the way it was before you broke it. And you're slightly changed by having had that break, particularly if it's a big break. You're changed by it. And in the case of the loss of a loved one, it's actually a beautiful change. So you allow it to change you. Ah, okay. So you're now you, and this absence that slowly over time becomes a presence of the loved one. And it's a very interesting and very beautiful experience. We're cracked open into that which feels empty, gone. But slowly, slowly, slowly over time, that absence fills with their presence. It's like now they are in us. And yeah, it's different than when they were outside of us. But something has shifted in us. And it's not as simple as just loss or grief. It's something much deeper and bigger than that. But you've got to allow for the presence of that absence in order for that absence to then become a presence. And you just be with it. Whatever arises. And you know, when you sit in a room and you expect them to walk in, instead of allowing yourself to be overcome with grief that they don't walk in, sit down and see if you can feel them. Maybe they have walked in, just in a different body, in their non-tangible body. Who knows? Just sit down and close your eyes. Do you feel them? Allow the possibility that they've just walked into that room in spirit, and that you can feel it. And yeah, I get it. It's not nearly as nice as being able to run up and give them a hug. And so we grieve that loss. But we also allow for the presence of them in this new form. And there's no right way to do it, and there's no right amount of time for it to take. It's a dynamic process. And it'll happen exactly the way it's supposed to happen in you. Just allow it and trust it. Yeah. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. There will not be satsang tomorrow. I have to go to Delhi tomorrow afternoon. I'll be back day after tomorrow in the morning. So tomorrow no satsang, but then we'll be back on the 11th.